Today on Human Impossible, we examine 10 treasures. Not just ordinary treasures, but some believed to be so massive they could fund an entire nation. Some of these treasures are cursed, some have elaborate booby traps, and some we just can't find. Join us as we examine 10 treasures that some seekers have been chasing for decades. This is Padmanabhaswamy temples in India. And below is Vault B. It remains unopened due to powerful religious beliefs, mystical legends of serpent guardians requiring secret mantras to open, structural risks, and legal injunctions prevents forced entry, despite reports of vast hidden treasures possibly exceeding $1 trillion. Lake Guatavita is a small body of water in a forest-fringed crater, northeast of Bogota in central Colombia. It was a sacred site to the Muisca people, who cast elaborate gold offerings into its depths, inspiring the legend of El Dorado and several ill-fated attempts to drain the lake. Gold was found, enough to prove the accounts were real, not enough to account for what was described. Later efforts went further. Engineered cuts, lower water levels, modern equipment. Still, only fragments were recovered. This isn't a mystery of belief. It's a problem of limits. At what point does effort, technology, and documentation stop producing answers? Because Lake Guatavita doesn't ask if El Dorado existed. It asks something more uncomfortable. Why couldn't we finish finding what we already proved was there? Lake Guatavita shows us something important. Even when treasure is proven to exist, recovery can still fail. Oak Island takes that failure to its extreme. Oak Island is not unexplored. It is one of the most excavated sites on Earth. For over 2 centuries, people have dug here, by hand, by machine, with modern drilling, sonar, and capital. Because something is buried deep underground, and it was placed there deliberately. Early digs revealed platforms, layers, and flood tunnels, features that don't occur naturally. The deeper the effort went, the more resistance appeared. The explanation is simple. No one has dug far enough. But Oak Island forces a harder question. How does centuries of obsession, modern technology, and unlimited motivation still produce no conclusion? At what point does failure stop being about effort and start being about design? Because Oak Island isn't a story about treasure hunters. It's a case study in how something can be engineered, not to be found. Oak Island resists because of what lies beneath it. Tenochtitlan resists because an entire city was built on top of it. Tenochtitlan was not a small city. It was the capital of an empire. When the Spanish arrived, they documented vast quantities of gold and wealth. So much that much of it was melted down on the spot. But not all of it was recovered. As the city fell, large amounts of treasure vanished. Some was taken, some was hidden, some was never accounted for. Then something permanent happened. Tenochtitlan was dismantled, and Mexico City was built directly on top of it. Today, the remains of the Aztec capital lie beneath streets, buildings, and infrastructure. Excavation isn't difficult because the treasure might not exist. It's difficult because the city never stopped living. So the question isn't whether wealth was lost. It's this. How do you recover something buried beneath a civilization that cannot be excavated without destroying itself? When a city buries its past unintentionally, recovery becomes impossible. But what happens when concealment is deliberate? In 410 AD, the Visigoth king Alaric died during his campaign through Italy. According to historical accounts, he was buried beneath the Busento River, along with immense treasure. The method described is precise. The river was diverted. A grave was dug in the riverbed. Alaric and the treasure were placed inside. The river was returned to its original course. Then the workers were killed to preserve secrecy. 16 centuries later, nothing definitive has been found. Not because people haven't looked, but because the concealment itself was designed to undo the act. So the question isn't whether treasure was buried there. It's this. How do you locate something intentionally hidden by letting nature erase the crime? The Busento River hides treasure through engineering. Lake Toplitz hides it through danger. Lake Toplitz is not inaccessible. It is hostile. Located in the Austrian Alps, it was used during the final years of World War II. Documents confirm that valuable materials were transported to this lake, including crates believed to contain gold, currency, and classified assets. Some items were recovered, others were not. The problem isn't location, it's conditions. The lake is deep, cold, and filled with submerged timber. Visibility drops quickly. The lower layers contain hydrogen sulfide, a toxic environment for divers. Several people have died attempting recovery. Exploration has been restricted, in some cases stopped entirely. Some treasures disappear in secrecy. Others vanish in plain sight, on a battlefield. In 1185, the Battle of Dan no Ura marked the end of a dynasty. The defeated Taira clan fled by sea, carrying imperial treasures, including sacred regalia tied to the authority of the emperor. During the battle, ships sank. Artifacts went with them. The location of the loss is known. The history is recorded, but recovery has never been fully pursued. Part of the reason is practical. Underwater conditions, time, uncertainty. The other reason is cultural. Some objects were never meant to be recovered. Their loss is considered final, not accidental. Investigation gives way to reverence. Recovery gives way to restraint. So the question isn't whether artifacts were lost at Dan no Ura. It's this. How do you retrieve something when the barrier isn't technology or danger, but belief? When loss occurs underwater, recovery becomes uncertain. When loss occurs on land and still fails, that uncertainty deepens. Cocos Island has been searched more than almost any other site on this list. For over a century, expeditions have returned again and again, guided by maps, testimonies, and documented movements of treasure. Different teams, different tools, the same result. Nothing conclusive. The island is dense, remote, and constantly reshaped by erosion and growth. Landmarks shift. Evidence disappears. The explanation is simple. The treasure hasn't been found yet. But repetition creates pressure. At what point does repeated failure stop being about bad luck and start being about flawed assumptions? Because Cocos Island isn't a case of neglect. It's a case of sustained effort producing no closure. Some searches fail despite repetition. Others fail because nature erases everything at once. Northern Sumatra was once a major center of trade. Wealth moved through its ports. Gold, currency, goods from across the region. Then disaster struck. Earthquakes, tsunamis, entire coastlines reshaped in moments. Settlements vanished. Records ended. Recovery never began. This isn't a case of secrecy or restraint. It's scale. Disasters can erase wealth by accident. Genghis Khan's tomb may represent something erased on purpose. Genghis Khan ruled the largest contiguous empire in history. When he died, he left explicit instructions. His burial site was not to be known. Accounts describe a funeral procession that erased its own trail. Guards killed witnesses. Land was trampled and altered. No markers, no monuments, no records pointing to a place. Centuries of searching have produced nothing definitive. Not because of neglect, not because of danger, but because concealment was enforced at the moment of burial. This is not loss, it is intent. So the final question isn't whether Genghis Khan's tomb exists. It's this. How do you uncover something that was engineered, socially, militarily, and culturally, to be forgotten? That's my top 10 of hidden treasures. Let me know in the comments which one you would pursue even if it is life or death. Don't forget to like and subscribe.